have invested a significant amount of energy and we have created what we call studios on the top of Hedera for organizations to use tokenization, stablecoin in particular, in a very straightforward way. Instead of understanding every detail about what we talked about earlier, gossip and DAG and everything else, we are creating an abstraction layer where you can engage with Hedera, get all the benefits, but you don't need to understand every single detail. What you do is you consume an SDK that we created for tokenizing an asset or launching a stablecoin or actually engaging with an AI agent, right? So you have different studios that we made available to the ecosystem.
This episode of Encrypted is sponsored by Gate, a leading global cryptocurrency exchange established in 2013, serving over 35 million users with spot, futures, and margin trading for 3,600 plus cryptocurrencies, holding $12 billion in reserves with a 124% reserve ratio, and ranked second worldwide in 24-hour spot trading volume.
Welcome to the Encrypted Podcast, your gateway to the future of technology and innovation, right here in the heart of Dubai's dynamic tech universe. I'm your host, Maria Vovchok, and together with Dubai Blockchain Center, we are embarking on a journey that unravels the minds of tech visionaries through the digital frontiers that are shaping our world. Hello and welcome everyone to the Encrypted Podcast. I'm your host, Maria Vovchok, and today we're really happy to have here Eric Piscini, CEO of Hashgraph, the company powering and accelerating the Hedera ecosystem. Eric brings over 25 years of global experience leading transformation at IBM, Deloitte, IBM Watson Health, and several tech ventures. But today, he's focused on something much bigger: building the next generation of trust at scale, merging enterprise rigor with Web3 promise. He writes and speaks frequently about tokenization, the role of blockchain as trust layer for AI, and the future of decentralized infrastructure. Under his watch, Hashgraph is launching tools like HashSphere, nurturing open source and pushing forward a vision of Internet of Value where traditional systems and distributed ones converge. He's a global tech strategist, a thought leader featured in Forbes and CoinDesk, and as he likes to say, he's a man who doesn't believe in lines, except when he's playing tennis. Is that correct, Eric?
That's true, yes.
Welcome to Encrypted. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And can you please tell us what else I believe our audience should know about you that maybe I haven't mentioned yet?
Well, I did start my journey in blockchain about 13 years ago.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
Very early
so you're
days.
One of the early blockchain early adopters, you can say so, right?
Yes, exactly right. I was at Deloitte at that time, and we were starting to look at how do we benefit from the technology behind Bitcoin, and how do we leverage that technology for our clients in order for them to benefit from the decentralized aspect of this technology, really.
Whenever we're talking about right now about Hashgraph today, what is the biggest vision that you are chasing for Hashgraph these days?
Yeah, I think first what's important to realize is Hashgraph is really the team behind the Hedera network.
Yes.
There is a reason why we have two different teams, companies, but when you look at who is at Hashgraph today, is the founding team, is Man Salmon and Dr. Lehman Baird.
Yeah.
Both of them are at Hashgraph. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to decentralize the operation of the project, right? So now you have Hedera Council, and we can talk about that later.
Yes, of course.
And then Hashgraph, the company behind the network. So Hashgraph, what we do is we do technology, product, marketing, communication, DevOps, security, and a lot of other things that are actually supporting the network. So you asked me about vision.
Yes.
The vision
and
is...
the ecosystem, by the way, definitely tell us, because I believe a lot of people who have heard previously about Hedera Network, Hashgraph, they're interested to know how the whole ecosystem is working and how it combines together. Yeah,
so the ecosystem works in very similar to a lot of other Web3 companies and ecosystems. You have a team that is Hashgraph building the network and supporting the network. You have a foundation who's helping ecosystem players. So now it's called the Hedera Foundation. We changed the name a few months ago now.
Got it.
And the Hedera Foundation is helping ecosystem players to adopt Hedera and HBAR, which is the currency we have. And so that's the Hedera Foundation. And then the Hedera Council is the company managing 31 large organizations who are actually running the network of Hedera, right? So among those 31, you have Google and IBM and Dell and a lot of banks and many other companies. And that's the Hedera Council, right? So Hedera Council is the network itself, Hashgraph, the company supporting the network, and Hedera Foundation, the foundation giving grants to the rest of the ecosystem.
So actually, whenever we're talking about, in this case, Hedera Council, because it has pretty interesting, in this case, let's say, structure. So could you please tell us how does it work? What are the pros and cons? And what is the, let's say, unique vision and approach whenever we're talking about Hedera
Council?
So
what's interesting is it was designed this way from the very beginning. From the very beginning, Mance and Lehman, so the two co-founders of Hedera, said in order for this technology, this network to be trusted, we need to be permissioned. Permissioned, yeah. Meaning in the blockchain world. Permission versus permissionless, right? Meaning that only trusted parties can validate the transactions. And then they said, okay, who could be the best trusted parties in the world? And they went after the big companies, right? The top 2,000 companies in the world. That's why you have Google and IBM and Dell into the council, and each of them operate one node on the network and validate transactions. In addition to just running the network, which is very important, but they do that, they also constitute different committees to make decisions on who is going to be the next member, on how do we implement the next generation of technologies onto Hedera. They make decisions on how do we manage a treasury of Hedera, HBAR, right? So all of that group is really the governing structure of the entire network, right? And that's a little bit unique. If you look around Web3, there are not many organizations and systems and platforms who operate this way, right? The council is a big differentiator for us.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, whenever we're talking about permission blockchain, does it contradict the concept of decentralization? So how decentralized Hedera is today?
Well, so you have a lot of ways to think about decentralization, right? And something we didn't say earlier, we are a public blockchain. So you can see you
have both options, if I'm not mistaken, public and private blockchains, obviously
So you have four options.
Really,
in blockchain. You have private permissionless. Let's start again. You have four options in blockchain. You have public permissionless, which is Bitcoin.
Yes.
Right. So that's completely open. Anyone can validate. Anyone can see what's happening on the network. The other extreme is private permissioned.
Yes.
Meaning no one can become a validator unless they are voted in, and you and me cannot see what's happening in that ledger. That's a private ledger, permissioned. And then you have flavors between those two, and that's what we are. Is we are public, so anyone can see what's happening on the Hedera ledger, but you cannot become a validator, which is why we are permissioned.
Private
so we are permissioned public ledger. Right?
Oh, this one in this case.
We are public, and that's important because that creates that level of trust that you can have in the network. Anyone can look and see what's happening, right? You cannot validate transactions, but you can see what's happening. So you asked me about decentralization.
Yes.
Decentralization has a lot of different layers, right? So some projects can say we are completely decentralized. But if you look under the cover, they are all running in the same data center. That's not decentralized, right? Yeah. That is very centralized. So we have on purpose designed the network with the different member of the council to be across at least 10 different clouds in the world, and to have distribution from a geographical point of view of those nodes. And of course, every node is managed and controlled by each of the entity, right? So we have a very solid decentralization model because of all of this, right? And in addition to this, the code, the technology, the code itself is open sourced and also decentralized. So anyone can contribute to the open source community to continue to improve the code of Hedera.
Let's talk more about Hashgraph consensus. How, in this case, how many are those nodes out there, and how do they reach the consensus?
So we have 31 nodes today. The goal is to go to 39. So we are very deliberate about who can become a council member. So it takes time to make sure we have the right to validate the validators.
Yes.
It takes time. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
So how, in this case,
do they
reach the consensus?
Yes. So the way they reach consensus is a little bit different from a typical blockchain. So if you're a technology purist, we are not a blockchain, right? We are not a series of blocks attached to each other. That's not the way the solution was designed.
Yeah.
It was designed to be what we call a DAG, and the DAG is really a graph as opposed to a blockchain. And the value of this, and you can look up all the technologies, it's just brilliant technologies behind this. But the goal, which is important, the goal is to say, one, this is high security, right? So we are asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant, if you want to go into the technology, ABFT, and that's the guarantee of very high security on the network. The second piece is what we call fair ordering. So when you're on a blockchain and you want to send a transaction for validation to a blockchain, you typically enter into a mempool, a memory pool, and then the validators validate your transaction, right? All of that takes a few seconds, typically. But in some blockchains, depending on where you are in the chain, you can actually front run someone else. And so you can say, oh, I see a transaction coming, I'm going to be just ahead of them, bing.
Yeah.
And then you get validated before them. On our blockchain, that's impossible, right? Just because of the mechanisms that we implemented. So you cannot front run a transaction. And you're going to tell me, okay, well, so why is that important, right? Because it's already in seconds. Well, think of the capital market impact, right? So if I see a bunch of transactions coming to the network to sell a stock, right? That's going to decrease the value of the stock, right? So if I can front run that and sell before everybody else, I sell at a better price than everybody else. That's why front running is extremely important. Without the mechanism that we have of fair ordering, you can front run and you can remove the trust from the network. That's really what we're talking about here. So the technology of consensus was designed to address all that and make sure that we have a highly secure, highly fair technology.
Can you, in this case, also tell us from the technical perspective, let's talk and focus on scaling. Do you have scaling issues, and whether sharding and scaling approaches are coming to Hedera soon, how much they are needed, or where is right now the situation with scaling on Hedera?
Yeah, that's a good question because we are a layer one.
Yeah.
So typically you have scalability challenges on layer ones. That's why people do layer twos, people do other things. Today we are able technically to go to 20,000 transactions per second.
20,000 transactions per second?
Yes, which is very high for layer one.
Yeah.
We actually reached that limit a few times already in our history. For about a year and a half, we were at 5,000 transactions per second.
Oh.
So that was a very scalable network. So we are not really concerned about scalability right now because we've been able to address any needs that we have so far. If we need to, we have sharding that's available. We never implemented because we never had to. We never needed to. No one asked us for more than 20,000 transactions per second. We also created HashSphere that you mentioned at the beginning, and HashSphere is not a way to offload, activity and capacity to another network, but that could be used in the context of scaling the network to a higher volume of transactions. So today, we don't have any challenges when it comes to scaling because of the way the technology works.
So in this case, can you please, because we have a pretty different audience. Somebody is new to crypto, somebody is not. So overall, how the development was designed from the very beginning and with the help of HashSphere as well, as you mentioned, how does it work so everybody can understand really how 20,000 transactions are happening per second?
So it's very technical. So I'm not sure we need to go into that level of technology. I invite you to actually read the white paper that Lyman Baird created at the beginning of the project.
I read it, but some of the people maybe haven't. So
you should, because it's like the Satoshi white paper, right?
Yeah.
You need to read that paper to get into the space, and you have to read that to understand the technology. I would do a poor representation of that technology if I'm trying to explain it today. I guess what's important to understand is the consensus mechanism is a gossip mechanism, which is different from the mechanism you typically have on the blockchain.
Yeah.
The consensus itself is a graph as opposed to a series of chain, right? A series of blocks on a chain. So there are very unique differences. We are not the only one doing this, right? You have other technologies, other blockchain using DAG, which is a technology overall. So that's not unique, but the implementation was again brilliant by Dr. Lyman Baird on the implementation of the gossip mechanism and the DAG design, so that we are creating high performance and high security. High security is also very important.
And also tokenomics is very important. So how do you, in this case, align long-term incentives for developers and for HBAR holders?
Yeah, so we minted all the HBAR at the beginning of at the launch of the project. So we have overall total finite number of HBAR, 50 billion HBARs.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a finite number. Those tokens were allocated to the Hedera Council. The Hedera Council decided how to allocate those tokens to different organizations, including Hashgraph, right? So you asked me about developers. The way developer gets supported is three ways. One is they get grants from the foundation. So the foundation can decide to support a developer, to support an organization, to support an NGO, to build a solution on the network. They receive HBAR for doing this. The second one is when you're a developer and you want to stake your HBAR, you can receive a little bit of staking rewards. That staking reward was high at some point, and it's really low at this stage of the network. There is no real staking reward today. We call that de minimis. It's probably in the 0.2%. So it's a mechanism that does exist, but we are not using it today. It's not something that we are planning on using. And the reason is because we have a finite number of HBARs. We are not an inflationary model. If you look at other models like Ethereum or Solana, they are inflationary models, which is great too. And that's why they can deliver staking rewards to the people staking, their cryptocurrencies. We don't have a limited number of supply. And that changes completely the dynamic. And then the third way developers get support from us is by having support from my team, from Hashgraph, because we can help them build, design, secure their solution, the applications they built on the top of Hedera, right? So they get support in a lot of different ways, and we have tremendous success with that.
So tell us, please, how in this case this decision-making now work, what the leadership changes again means, Harmon, Tom Sylvester, how this decision-making now work between Hashgraph and the council.
So the decision-making happen in a decentralized way by design, right? So you have those three organizations, and they all are designed to operate separately from each other, right? So if you look at the council, Tom is the president of the council, right? The council is an organization, an LLC in the US, so you need a staff, you need someone to run this company, right? And Tom is doing this. Mance Harmon, one of the co-founders, is the chair of the council, right? The chair of the council is the person who organizes the governing of the network. So he's managing, all those committees. He's managing all those people to say, how are we going to make the next decision on the network, on the economics, on who should join the network, right? So he's organizing all of this. So he's the chair of the council, right? So what is do?
How in this case, let's say the decision making work in connection between Hashgraph and the council?
Oh, so the council makes decisions, right? And then the council says, for example, we want to implement a new technology feature on the network, right? So that technology feature is going to come to us, and we're going to say, okay, this is how we're going to implement this. This is when we can do it. We go back and forth with the council, what we call the technology committee, because there's a committee dedicated to this, and the technology committee approves the decision of the council from a pure technology point of view, and we implement that technology into the network, a few months later. And that's how it works, right? So the decision is made by a decentralized group of individuals, the 31 I mentioned earlier, and then we implement that change. In the middle of that, we have to remember that we are an open source project, and so we launched last year Hiro, which is the name of the open source project. And so every code contribution that we make is actually managed under the Linux Foundation for Decentralized Trust, and which is used to be called Hyperledger.
Yeah.
So Linux Foundation for Decentralized Trust is the one governing, if you want, the code of the network. So really, the way it works is the community, including the council, is coming to the foundation, the Linux Foundation, and saying, I want to support and propose a new change to the technology, a new change to the network. Hiro, as a project, would approve that or not. Let's say they approve it. Then it goes to the council, and the council says, we approve as well, because we want to implement that feature onto the Hedera network. And then we, as Hashgraph, implement that change that the council made.
Can you please tell me, because you're the CEO of Hashgraph, what is the most challenging thing you have to do as the CEO? Or maybe things, because I believe it should be not only one.
You can answer the question as any other CEO, right? You can say, that what's challenging is managing uncertainty, managing change, managing, people, managing the issues that no one else wants to manage, right? But that's a very traditional CEO. I think what's specific here is decentralization is different from any other job I had before, right? Very often when you come into the Web3 world, you have to adjust your leadership style. You have to adjust your mindset to a decentralized world. Decentralized world means there is no one who's making all the decisions, right? So there is a lot of influence management, a lot of coordination, a lot of relationship building that needs to happen in order for Hashgraph and the ecosystem and Hedera, of course, to be successful. So it's a different mindset that you need when you are a CEO into a decentralized ecosystem, right? I think that's very much, I don't think it's a challenge. I think it's a very different way of operating.
You've spoken in one of your recent interviews about Agentic Era. Let's focus right now on that. So how do you see AI and blockchain coming together? And how, in this case, blockchain can be the trust layer for AI, as you mentioned before?
Yeah, that's a big topic too. And that's really interesting what's happening. So if you step back a little bit, right, 12 years ago when I started, or 13 now, I started my journey, and we were all looking for the killer app, right? What's going to be the single app that people are going to be excited about that's going to run on a blockchain system? We've been working on this. It was payment, it was supply chain, it was trade finance. We did a lot of different things. And then stablecoin arrived, right? And stablecoin to me is really the first real big application at scale on blockchain systems, including on Hedera. We do have stablecoins on Hedera. The second killer app to me is actually AI.
On the blockchain or separately?
No, on the blockchain. The killer app for blockchain is AI. And the reason is because you have a lot of different ways to think about AI and blockchain. I usually organize that in 3 different layers. The first layer is to say, today when you use an AI system, let's call that a system, you use a black box. You use something that an organization, a large tech company usually has made available for you to use. You don't understand how that model learns, how that model, infer, how do you generate outcome, the sources used to generate that outcome. You don't understand any of that. And most of the time it's okay if you don't understand. But in some cases it's very critical that you do understand why this model gave me this answer. And one way to do this is to say, I'm going to create an environment where any activity that is part of the AI supply chain, I call that the AI supply chain, right? Everything that's happening in the AI before you get your answer on ChatGPT will be anchored onto a blockchain. So you create a transaction anytime something happened with a model, and then you can go back in time after you got your answer. You can go back in time and validate and trust that the model and the team and the company behind did the right thing along the way, right? And the blockchain becomes, in this context, the trust layer for AI. Because now you can go back in time, you can validate, you can audit what happened with that AI model. That's why we call that the trust layer of AI, right? But there is another layer on the top of that, which is AI agents that are going to be representing many of us will need to also exchange value with each other. And so you have a lot of work, agent-to-agent communication, agent-to-agent payments, a lot of activity is taking place today to make sure that those agents, when they exchange value, which includes money, between themselves on behalf of humans, then we can trust those AI agents to do the right thing. And when you think trust, you think blockchain. You think blockchain will enable those agents to exchange money between themselves so that we humans can trust those AIs for doing what's the right thing for us.
Encrypted is your exclusive ticket to the epicenter of technological innovations in the MENA region. One of the, let's say also, the most relevant topics everybody's talking right now is tokenized real-world assets. So can you please tell us, where do you see the biggest opportunity for Hedera in this case, and in particular where Hashgraph can contribute to that?
Yeah, so I think tokenization of real-world assets is a very broad topic.
Yes, because it can vary from real estate coming to
let's define
jewelry and other
let's
things.
define what a real-world asset is, right? It could be cash, it could be securities, bonds,
as you mentioned, stablecoins, one of the obvious and very bright use cases for tokenizing fiat on a blockchain.
Exactly right. So tokenization of real-world assets is a really big space. We have invested a significant amount of energy and we have created what we call studios on the top of Hedera for organizations to use tokenization, stablecoin in particular, in a very straightforward way. Instead of understanding every detail about what we talked about earlier, gossip and DAG and everything else, we are creating an abstraction layer where you can engage with Hedera, get all the benefits, but you don't need to understand every single detail. What you do is you consume an SDK that we created for tokenizing an asset or launching a stablecoin or actually engaging with an AI agent, right? So you have different studios that we made available to the ecosystem. What's really interesting to me is when you come to tokenization is really 3 things. One is you say, I had assets before and they were illiquid. They were real estate. They were, a company here that we supported is tokenizing horse race.
I heard about this use case. That's very, very interesting one.
So you can tokenize those things, and because you do, you make that asset now available to investors in 2 different ways. You say, okay, now I can invest into a real estate project for $200, which is not possible in the traditional world because the fees just to invest into a real estate project is $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000. So you cannot invest $100 and pay $5,000 in fees. In the context of tokenization, you actually lower the barrier to entry. So now any investor, almost any investor, can participate in that project. That's number one. Number two is you can come from anywhere in the world, right? So now that project, that's a real estate, for example, project, can be accessible by anyone in the world as long as you have regulatory framework in place to invest in that project. So if you live in Africa and you want to invest in Asia in a real estate project, now you can, because that asset is tokenized, right? Yeah. That is super interesting because that gives people the chance to participate in wealth creation all over the globe that typically they don't have access to today. Yeah. So that's the second piece that's interesting. And the third piece that's really exciting to me is because we do all of that on chain, all of those events, right, investments, reporting, voting, whatever we do about this asset, all of that is on chain. So there's a level of trust that you can have when you invest that didn't exist today, right? Very often when you invest in those assets, you don't really know how those assets perform. You invest into a real estate project, let's say you're a big investor, you invest, $20 million in the real estate project. You don't know how this building is being used, the consumption of electricity and water. You typically don't know this information. If you tokenize these assets and you do it the right way, now all of this information becomes available on the chain that is tokenizing this asset. And as an investor, you understand what you're investing into at a time of investment and along the way. And by the way, if you want to sell your portion of investment, you can as well, which is typically for illiquid assets a challenge. In the tokenized world, it's not a challenge anymore.
When you said that there's obviously with tokenized real estate, there's an access for people from around the world to have this ability to invest into that, just buying a portion of tokens on chain. Can you please, in this case, state that already the, let's say, perception of Hedera as in the past only enterprise blockchain is changing, that it's right now it's also focused on retail customers more?
I think it's an interesting point because every blockchain project in the world, not just Hedera, is addressing both markets at the same time.
Yes, they're trying.
B2C and B2B. And not because we made that decision, but because you have to. You have to engage with both. You cannot say, I'm going to be enterprise only, or I'm going to be retail only. Because if you do that, it's like you limit yourself in what this technology can do. This technology can enable an asset to be tokenized, which is a B2B impact. But the consequence of that is investors, retail, can invest into that asset. So why would you limit yourself to just the B2B piece? You have to engage with the retail community as well. So I don't think that's a decision that we have to make. We have to do both at the same time, retail and B2B. Our brand as Hedera has always been the adults in the room, right? Because we did the right thing from a compliance point of view, we did the right thing from a regulatory point of view, even though it was very hard to do that. But we did it anyway. And so now, and you have the council with those big brands, right, gives a lot of credibility to the network. So for that reason, we are the adults in the room when it comes to Web3. We are, I think, the first Web3 project to get SOC 2 compliant, right? And I don't know anyone else who did this. We did. And we did this for that reason, because we continue to want to be the trusted party into the Web3 space.
I would say that you've been, by the way, really active as well here in the Middle East. Can you please tell our audience how, in general, Middle East and in particular Dubai is fitting into your global strategy?
So that's an interesting question. I don't think there is a fit per se. I think when you're operating on a global basis, you have to be here. You have to be in the Middle East. So we do have people here in the Middle East to support the different aspects of what we do. We support companies in the Middle East to build on Hedera. One of the reasons I'm here this week is because I want to identify additional opportunities to build Hedera solutions on the top of Hedera whether it's payments, stablecoins, tokenization of assets. So I had a lot of discussion this week about doing that on the top of the network. To me, the Middle East has very unique characteristics that we have to engage with. One is a very big risk appetite, right? So there is a lot of capital allocated to taking risk and building new things on blockchain. That's number one. Number two, there is a regulatory framework that's pretty well established now, with VARA in particular in Dubai.
Yeah.
And that regulatory framework is actually really, really good for builders, because now we know how to position a platform, an application, a solution on the top of Hedera. And that gives us clarity, which we don't have in other jurisdictions today, not yet at least.
Eric, so sometimes there is a bit confusion between understanding what is Hashgraph Group, Hashgraph Association. You're the CEO of Hashgraph. So one of the things, the news that is all over the news as well, that Hashgraph Group, they have secured a DGM license. They have announced plans for 100 million venture funds to support builders in the region for Web3, to push Web3 adoption in the region. So could you please explain us whether the difference, let's say, Hashgraph and Hashgraph Group, and what can you tell us about pushing more Web3 adoption here in the region?
Yeah, so I realize it's confusing because we use similar names. I think that's the challenge of decentralization, what we talked about earlier. When you decentralize, you actually activate different parties in the ecosystem, and some of them decide to do what they want to do in a specific region because they have traction in that region. And that's what happened with the Hashgraph Association, which is a non-profit organization based in Switzerland. They received a grant from Hedera a while back, and they have decided to focus on activating developers in different regions, including the Middle East. And they are part of a group called the Hashgraph Group, right? And I know it's confusing. So you have the Hashgraph Group and the Hashgraph Association, which is dedicated to investing into different regions, and then Hashgraph, which is the entire team supporting building the network itself, right? So it's a clear differentiation from a role point of view. The name is confusing, I realize. So supporting developers, again, back to what I said earlier, we support developers with giving grants, right? So that was the Hedera Foundation. The Hashgraph Association is also giving grants, but mostly in the form of equity into developer and companies to build on the top of Hedera. Right? So that's the Hashgraph Association. They also launched that fund that you mentioned in Abu Dhabi, and that fund is to support developers as well and organizations by investing into those organizations. So very similar to what THA does, just an extension leveraging the assets in the region, right? So that's what's happening. And then all of those developers, when they need technical support, when they need support from the core technology team, they come to us. So that's the coordination is happening between all those pieces of decentralized governance. And then we support from a technology point of view, because the core team, the core technology is at Hashgraph.
So in that case, let me ask you what exactly your focus as the CEO of Hashgraph right now. As you said, you've been also coming here more often recently, and you're also really bullish on the clear regulations that the UAE has whenever we're talking about Web3. So what is your vision right now, and how are you trying to implement that vision whenever we're talking about the Middle East and Dubai in particular?
Yeah, so the topics that are really interesting to me are around payments and stablecoins. Sometimes we bring CBDC into the picture, right? Central bank, digital currency. I think this topic is a little bit tricky from a political point of view, but think of it as payment, right? So supporting payment flows in the region is something that we are really excited about. We have a project in Qatar, for example, not Dubai, but not too far from here, to support Islamic finance, tokenization of assets in the context of Islamic finance, with a company called Blade Labs, really, really good team in Qatar doing this. They just got licenses to operate in the region. So we like those two topics, right? Payments and tokenization are really the two topics that we want to continue to invest.
Thank you so much, Eric. Right now we move to the last part of our interview. Stay tuned with Encrypted. Rapid fire questions. Okay, Eric, if you had to explain blockchain to a child, how would you do this in one sentence?
A child.
Yes.
I would say that it's a book where you write down everything that's happening, and everybody can read the book.
Which blockchain founder would you like to take on a road trip? Other blockchain founder.
Other than my founders, yeah. Other than
Of course, you can mention.
Vitalik. I would go on a trip with Vitalik.
If you found out who Satoshi Nakamoto was, what would be your first question to him, her, or them?
I hope I never figure this out, but
Really?
I don't want to know because I think that's part of the value is to not know who he is or she is or they are. But the first question would be, how did you decide to stay anonymous?
Oh, nice. Name 5 qualities that you believe a real entrepreneur should have. 5 qualities.
5.
Yes.
I think first one is flexibility. The second one is resilience. The third one is being a good listener. The fourth one is think globally, because we live in a global world and you cannot stay in your own world. Number 5 is try to have fun.
What would you never do while building a company?
Never do.
Yes.
I would never cut bridges with old friends.
The biggest misconception people have about Web3?
I think the biggest misconception is that Web3 is for crypto nerds.
What's harder, explaining DeFi to a 5-year-old or teaching your parents how to use MetaMask or any other crypto wallet?
My mom is using MetaMask, so I was able to do that. Yes.
So then your choice would be?
I think it's harder for people, older generation, to embark. I think a kid by nature is more curious and more engaged in those topics, and so is open to new things more than we are, I guess.
Finish the sentence. My business philosophy is?
My business philosophy is keep moving.
The next big tech trend to follow?
Quantum.
Amazing. What's your personal formula for success?
Sleep.
And Dubai for you is associated with?
Innovation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eric. Today we had Eric Piscini, CEO of Hashgraph. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. From the gleaming skyscrapers of Dubai to the innovation hubs of the Middle East and beyond, Encrypted brings you thought-provoking discussions, exclusive insights, and stories of innovation that will leave you inspired.
This episode of Encrypted is sponsored by Gate, a leading global cryptocurrency exchange established in 2013, serving over 35 million users with spot, futures, and margin trading for 3,600 plus cryptocurrencies, holding $12 billion in reserves with a 124% reserve ratio, and ranked second worldwide in 24-hour spot trading volume.